Hi, I'm Dr. John Lund, the author of How to Hug a Porcupine, and we're talking now about toxic behaviors. And we defined a toxic behavior as any behavior that detracts from you or someone else becoming their highest and best selves. Now, focusing on that for a moment, people have that is, by their cultures, they've adopted traditions which allow them to do this, and they think that, for example, like on criticism, which we were talking about briefly, that criticism is something very positive. Now, I want you to know that there is necessary criticism and appropriate criticism, but there's no such thing as constructive criticism. To construct, that's an oxymoron. To construct is to build up, and to criticize is to tear down. Now, there are some things that need to be torn down, but it's how we do it. It's not just what we're doing, it's how we do it that will define the person as being toxic or non toxic. And especially in a husband wife relationship, which is a relationship of equals. That means that as a parent, you can say to a child, you should, you need, you ought. Those are totally appropriate words. That's not a problem. But in a husband wife relationship, those words are inappropriate and would be classified as toxic. If a husband says to a wife, you should, you need, you ought, what he's really doing is parenting her. Now, those are not words that are appropriate for a husband wife relationship. Let me give you an example of some words that would be appropriate. Honey, it would mean a lot to me if you would. I would appreciate it if you could. In other words, you're making a request and you're speaking in a language here of respect. But when you use the words should, need, or ought, you're talking from a stewardship position, much like a boss or a parent. And that is what I mean by how you approach what it is you have to say is going to be as important as what it is you have to say, especially when dealing with criticism. Criticism is probably the number one toxic behavior. So that's what we have to look at here is how can we manage that in such a way as to make our relationship the very best it can be. Well, that's going to require some interesting insight here, and I'm going to jump into that right now. And that insight requires that you respect the boundaries of another person as being your equal. And once you accept that a person is your equal, that means that you have to be willing to negotiate. And negotiation never involves a compromise of morals or principles, but most of what we have to compromise on are dearly held feelings and strongly held positions that really qualify us to be only talking about an opinion. And so when we're talking now about how to deal with different opinions, it has to do with can we respect another individual and can we respect how we're going to communicate with them and how we're going to receive communication back from them. But I want to go back now to an underlying principle, which is the principle of criticism. Have you accepted the thought that criticism is never constructive, that it's only destructive? Now, let me share something with you. This will be a revelation. Criticism doesn't change behavior. It does not change behavior. And yet, if I were to ask you, why are you being critical? You might find that most well-meaning people would say, well, because I want to change somebody's behavior. Well, here's a sponge, and let me just take this sponge and my imaginary sponge here, and I'm going to conform that sponge to exactly the position and the shape that I want it to be in. Now, I've got that sponge right here in my hand. Now, guess what? That sponge will stay there in that condition as long as I keep the pressure on. But the moment I release that pressure, that sponge is going to go back to its natural condition. And that's what we found in human personalities and in human behavior. As long as the critical person is there, you find that there is a temporary change of behavior to conform, maybe a child saying whatever the parent wants them to hear. But when that person is gone, then the person reverts to a natural position, which is contrary to maybe where they were being critical before. And we'll pick this up again.